In this meeting, can someone please call roll?
Sorry. Did you ask me to take roll?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear. Director Fultz? Here. Director Lang?
Here.
Duffy? Absent. Nicholson?
Here.
Williams?
Present.
We have a.
All right, so this portion of the meeting is reserved for oral communications for anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments this morning? I am seeing no one in the room. Don't know where my Zoom is up somewhere. Is there anyone online, Scott?
No.
And we have no one online. All right, so we can move to new business, and we have the glyphosate ban resolution. You taking that, Chris?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this item is the glyphosate ban resolution. And a brief background. So in 2019, the district board voted to adopt a resolution banning the use of glyphosate on all district lands. And the district has abided by this action ever since, because it was a board action and it was assumed that this resolution was adopted. However, we recently discovered, as we were updating the pest management plan, that the resolution has not actually been formally signed and recorded. And so we're bringing that resolution back to you today for consideration and formal adoption. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right, can we start with you, Lance?
Yeah, I've definitely got questions on this. I've looked at the water history reports on this, and I've seen absolutely no results for any glyphosate intrusion as far back as I can see. What was the general reasoning behind the consensus and the ban here?
I was not necessarily around at that time, and I don't think too many of the others were. I think there was general community concern, but yeah, I can't speak too much to the reasoning back then, as I was not.
I mean, I would agree with the general community concern just because of the carcinogenic nature if it does happen to get ingested, but it doesn't seem to be a concern in this area, and it certainly would be a powerful weapon to use against the broom if properly applied. So I would really think this should be open for consideration. Again, I think this might have been more of a knee-jerk reaction than anything really practical.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just, sorry, from the lawyer perspective, we just have a ton of these cases at the court right now, and I think it would be potentially opening the district up to liability if we used it. I don't necessarily disagree, but it makes me nervous. And it sounds like the district already adopted this, right? So it would be kind of a big change for us to go the other way now, right?
It does. The only reason I mention is because currently the only thing that we have on the approved list is Garlon 4 Ultra, which while it is on the EPA's approved list as a category 3, I have read through the MSDS and I have it in front of me right now, and the stuff is highly acutely toxic. It's no better, causes liver failure and kidney failure. So if we're already going to be dealing with things that in very, very small amounts are going to be that hazardous in the water, I just want to make sure that we're not kneecapping ourselves if it's something that can be used if we use it carefully.
I am curious to hear a little bit more about the legal aspects from you that you're seeing as far as opening the district up to liability.
Well, I mean, if we know that it's carcinogenic and we use it and someone gets sick or there's some sort of habitat destruction, and we clearly know that it's a problem because it's on a list and we had a prior board approval saying we're not going to use it, then it's like a negligence thing.
It is, but I've been looking at the reports that go back before 2019, before the resolution was approved. And this was back when everybody was using this stuff. I mean, everybody and their brother used Roundup in their backyards. And even when everybody was using it openly, we still didn't have any signs of this stuff in the water. And I mean, zero. So it's the only reason I mention it. Is we've had this actively tested under 2 different tests, EPA 574 and an in-house test. And both of them have turned up completely negative, even when the stuff was actively used. So I just want to make sure this isn't a knee jerk.
Okay. You ready to comment, or would you like to move on to Foltz?
I am ready to comment.
Okay,
First of all, it's a little odd that this wasn't signed, but I understand that there are issues that happen where mistakes are made. I am very worried about viewing decisions made before CZU that had a different priority set than what we may view afterwards. Fire, fuel management, road access situations were not as of a high priority, and our understanding of fuels was not as much of a high priority as it may be now. Yes, a lot of things do have risk. All glyphosate does have a risk. There are also measures involved by the county to allow for the application, and there are protection measures. I don't know if those were fully discussed during the board election or not, or the board resolution. I don't know what knowledge was available at the time of that vote to understand. And I think Member Foltz would have and be able to shed light on that. I think. That being said, wildfire smoke and catastrophic wildfire smoke is a considerably higher health risk to our community than what the amount of glyphosate might be, if it's followed by the actual legal appropriate measures. The carcinogens that light up and the toxins that are broadcast across our community are incredibly toxic and lead to massive health issues. And so if we are discussing the risks, we do have to discuss the benefits that may occur if, say, these were being used, if glyphosate's being used for a fuels project or for anything that might assist with better fuels treatment or access points for fire suppression. I think we as a district owe it to our community and the ratepayers to evaluate whether or not there are times where this might be the most effective way to treat those. And so it's just a blanket ban may not allow the best way to protect our community. And maybe there's other options, but that's what I wanted to say.
I have a question for Chris. Do we have other pesticides that are close to as effective other than the one that was already on the list?
I am not an expert on these pesticides, herbicides. Garlon that we use has seemed to be effective. That is effective on a certain subset of plants, woody plants and broadleaf, whereas glyphosate is effective across a wider band of plants.
And is
But-
there, oh, sorry, go ahead.
In terms of effectiveness, I can't speak to that. Obviously, since my time, we haven't used glyphosate, so I haven't been able to see that firsthand.
And what about alternatives to the one that we're already using?
There are a number of herbicides out there. I haven't explored the list of potential other ones too thoroughly, but there are other options out there. These ones are very effective, obviously, and that's why they're so widely used. But yeah, there are other potential options out there.
So I'm kind of hearing that folks want to study perhaps, have
Well, let's
someone
go
look at it.
Director Foltz, and we can,
What's that?
if Director Foltz hasn't gotten a chance yet to speak, so let's go to him when we come back to again for some more board comment. Director Foltz?
Yes, I participated in the knee-jerk action there. Let's try to dial that down a bit. Okay. This was actually a very well debated, long debated, not only during board meetings, but during the election leading up to the board that took office in December of 2018. And the overwhelming consensus of the community at that time, since this was a major portion of the campaign, was to implement exactly this. So this wasn't done in any kind of reactive or knee jerk or anything like that. It was actually after a very long community oriented, drawn out process to conclude that we did this. In fact, I think the only thing that we probably didn't include in this resolution that we should have was ensuring that any easement that we granted to other agencies, mainly the county, since the county always was trying to find ways to circumvent our ban, it was included in those easement documents. And I think going forward, that kind of thing needs to be done. I don't have a problem with granting the county the ability to do certain things on our land, but they need to follow all of our policies. They don't get to set their own. I guess what I'm hearing here is that at least there's 3 people on this, and I figured that this eventually would come back that want to revisit the this policy. I don't necessarily have a problem doing that, but I think that would also have to be done in the same fashion that we did the original one, which is a very lengthy process of reevaluating. In the meantime, what we're really talking about here is addressing a clerical oversight. And so that needs to be dealt with immediately and put into place while we then conduct, if that is the board's desire to do so, a reevaluation of a ban on glyphosate and perhaps other herbicides. I think there is a very strong sense in the community that the use of these herbicides is not necessarily in the best interest of the community, certainly not in the best interest of our staff that had been the ones that were applying it. And I think certainly expose us as deep pockets agencies to significant liability, whether or not there is a, perhaps as Michael was saying earlier, a balancing of risk. That's not the way the legal system works, unfortunately. We don't get to go into a courtroom and say, well, we knew about the use of glyphosate or perhaps other herbicides and the risks associated with them. We chose to do that because the risk of what happens during a wildfire are greater. A jury is going to award the plaintiff a huge amount of money in that circumstance, regardless of what our arguments are. I wish it weren't that way. I wish we could have those kinds of discussions in court, but that's not the way that it works. We need to be real about what we're facing here. So I'm in favor of obviously moving forward with correcting a clerical issue. I don't want that clerical issue to be used as a loophole upon which staff or anybody else thinks that we could do certain things to try to circumvent what was clearly the intent of the board and the community at the time, based on the vote, to adopt this ban.
Okay. Well, I really hear what you're saying over here, Duffy. You know, right now we have a 3M lawsuit that we had to apply for because the fire foam chemicals led to forever chemicals that were found near a well site. They're not threatening our water in any ways, but if we had another fire, that's something to think about. If they came in and they sprayed our forest with that, we could be living with something that's a forever chemical instead of something that has a high half-life, and when applied in the dry season is a fairly safe application for sure. So I think that has to be something that we think about. I know that we can't use that necessarily in the court of law that you're saying, but it is something to have in the back of our mind as far as, you know, making sure we're prepared for the next fire. This is still being fairly used by other organizations of the cut and dab. I mean, they have just straight up volunteers that are citizens that they hand a dabber to and they go out and cut, correct?
I don't know about citizens or just like, you know, untrained people. Usually it would be someone who is a certified applicator who's going to be applying these things.
Painted on.
My friend volunteered and they handed them dabbers and they just went out there.
Well,
Yeah.
Not good
I
practice.
think
Yeah.
California law states that for government agencies that you have to be a certified professional to
And
apply.
apply. Yeah, I don't know who she was volunteering with, but yeah.
But other entities do still use glyphosate.
Yeah, in our area, right?
Yeah, generally.
Okay, yeah. So it is something that's used for broom control readily. And I have sat and talked with some of our environmental leaders in this area about, trying to balance our fire protection needs, versus using glyphosate. And even they seem that, they're open to making sure that we have precautions and measure as far as doing it in the dry season, not when it's raining, and not doing a broadcast spray, but a dab only. So I really do feel like we tie our hands at the district by completely banning this. But it says that the recommended motion on here is to sign this, and if that is what you feel, Chris, is the right, way for the district to go, like, I am going to be looking to you as our environmental programs manager for that. So how do you feel about this?
I mean, I am looking at it from the kind of the perspective that Director Colts has provided, in that this was something that the board voted for. And so I'm just bringing this back to kind of amend that error, is the way that I'm looking at this. I'm I don't feel that I'm enough of an expert to really have much weigh in on the glyphosate question. And I think it is important, obviously, that we manage our fuels and manage our broom, our acacia, and a lot of the times that requires an herbicide. Whether that requires glyphosate is a good question. And I think one that I would be interested in digging into a little bit. This resolution, if it moves forward and gets passed, and then we decide later on that we don't want to fully ban it, we could go back and change that. So yeah, my perspective is this is something that the board voted for in the past. And we can just bring this resolution and get it actually signed into what it was supposed to be if there wasn't an admin error. And also in the meantime, the district has no plans to use glyphosate. So yeah, even if you were to not pass this resolution, we would still not be using glyphosate, and it is already not permitted under the pest management policy.
Mhm.
So just wanted to clear that up as well.
Okay, so we are having the pest management policy that's coming up next. So if we can continue to talk about the whole glyphosate on that next issue. But I'd want to go back through this board here and talk just specifically about signing this resolutions and people's feelings on that before we go out to public comment. And we'll start at the end of the table here.
I mean, for me, it sounds like it's a status quo thing and just fixing an administrative error. I'm not opposed to a study to address the valid concerns that people have brought up, but I think our hands are kind of tied in terms of passing this resolution for now, like today.
Okay, Williams?
I would agree. It should be ratified if it was already voted on. This is just an oversight. Going on to the glyphosate will be the following issue.
Okay, Duffy?
I guess I'm a little unclear why this is before our committee and why it shouldn't just be brought before the board to resolve their own issue, being that it's their shortfall, not ours. Is it because we're just bringing it to their attention, or what role does our committee actually play here, and why is it before us here at all?
This is another board decision, and while the board may choose to go ahead and ratify or adopt the resolution again, it is a different board and it is a new vote. And so I think having input from the committee is still valuable. That kind of is what the committee is for, is to provide some input. And this is a fresh vote. They could vote to not adopt the resolution. So yeah, I think having some input from the environmental committee is valuable for the board, which is why it's before you today.
I guess I can understand that there's a clerical error that we are discussing, and that it's a pretty easy discussion to have. But if this is something where we're supposed to be weighing in as the environmental committee, this resolution has very little information for us to work off of to actually make an informed decision. So while we can make a decision that, yes, nobody signed this, and that 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, this was a vote that happened that somebody wanted signed, yes, we can all agree that somebody wanted this signed and we can move forward with that. If you're asking whether or not this is a good idea, that's a different conversation to have. And I guess I'm trying to be clear exactly what are we saying with this resolution coming out of this committee?
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, if you if the committee strongly disagrees with the content of this resolution, then I would recommend that you not move forward with it. Even though it is to fix a former clerical error. But if you do agree with the content of banning glyphosate, then I would recommend that you move forward with it. But that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we get to the politics of it. And this is exactly what I was afraid of. And that is, the reason this didn't go to the board is there are people on the board in this community that are looking to overthrow the ban on glyphosate. And so rather than do it in what I would call a very straightforward, transparent, community-oriented board fashion of fixing the clerical error and then moving to a process by which you execute a study, which, by the way, had been requested of the environmental manager at the time, who refused to do anything on it. And go through a community process, bring it back, bring all the information back, and then decide what to do. We're trying to say what Chris basically said, well, if you don't agree to it, let's not pass it. Circumventing the policy that was put in place by the board at the time and clearly supported by the community. That's not the right way to do things. And that's the too clever by half stuff that makes people cynical about their government. Let's not do that. Let's fix the clerical error. And if the committee wishes to revisit this, or the board wishes to revisit this, the board can take that action. Let's not do what Chris was saying.
Right. All right, I'm gonna take this out to public comment now. If anyone has anything to say, we can please come up to the podium.
Wasn't planning on speaking on this item, here for something else. Of course, I'm Steve Butler, Slim Forster for several water companies. I work for City of Santa Cruz, I work for Soquel Creek Water, Wasco Water, and for you guys, dealing with all sorts of forestry issues. And I will say that the City of Santa Cruz, along with several water companies, did all kind of fall in line with this. I won't use the knee-jerk word, but certainly kind of a fear-based decision to ban glyphosate, and a lot of it was banned with the concept that it would be studied. I know that the city, we spent a lot of time studying it, and they did eventually roll back that ban. And now we have herbicides as a valid tool within basically a context of all the tools. So we don't suddenly jump on herbicide like, let's just spray everything. We don't do that. We certainly have a program and we look at different options and try to pick the best use. And so I just want to say that some of the water companies have changed their mind.
All right. Thank you, Slim. Nice to see you.
Can we get that Santa Cruz?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Rick Moran from the. I've been part of this discussion about glyphosate since it first came up before. In fact, I think I was the one that helped bring it up. So I sat on this environmental committee in 2016. And to Mr. Williams' point about not finding glyphosate in the water. That's true to the extent that they've studied it, right? But that wasn't the sole purpose. And the studies have not been extensive, and some since 2016 have suggested that glyphosate is in the water in farm communities, places where they use a lot of it. It's in the water. all right, not necessarily here. But the major concern that I had was that its effect on the people that used it. And that was a crew of people that worked here, that I worked with, that I played ball with, part of my community. And one of those people was a guy by the name of Charlie Hensley. And Charlie Hensley worked for the county of Santa Cruz. And he drank the water in the county of Santa Cruz. He drank the water up here, he lived up here. But he worked in the Parks Department and he applied glyphosate. Charlie Hensley, in my last discussions with him, wished that he had been able to talk about the dangers of glyphosate. Because now Charlie's dead. And he died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, successfully sued Monsanto Bayer because of his exposure to glyphosate. And Charlie Hensley, when he died, talking about Bob's concern about the community, when Charlie Hensley died, and everybody knew he died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma contracted from his use of glyphosate for the county of Santa Cruz and their weed abatement program. The Quail Hollow Ranch State Park was full. Parking was on Quail Hollow Road, and there was a massive group of people. The biggest group of people that I've seen here, besides a concert at Roaring Camp, was there to honor and to be sad about how Charlie Hensley died. So people in this community knew of people who had life-threatening experiences with the use of glyphosate, and that's why they banned it. And I know personally, my neighbor, her uncle was a landscaper. He's no longer with us here because he's dead. Because he successfully, his family successfully sued Bayer Monsanto and got a settlement. And he used glyphosate and he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the people in this valley know people that have used this product and have died from it, and they don't want it used on their watershed. So that's why it was banned, and it should remain banned. And it would be a great step backwards if it was reversed.
Thank you.
Hi, first of all, thank you for being here. I know what being on environmental committees are and mean. It's really important. My name is Chris Moran, and I worked for the city of Santa Cruz for 26 years as an environmental analyst. But emotionally, I grew up here. And the people here, we love our water. We're very proud of it. And when this happened in 2018, there was a slate of folks that wanted to stay on the water board that approved of using just a little dab of glyphosate. And the question was, how many dabs? How many dabs are we going to live with? You know, how are we going to get rid of the broom? It's like painting the San Francisco Bridge. If you start using glyphosate, then you'll turn it into this type, I'm not sure how to say it, type Holpro. You know, there's always new names. It's like a drug dealer who, this one's illegal, so they're going to make a new combination and then they're going to sell it to you. But the fact is that the people here do not want poisons on their watershed. I don't want poisons. We don't want poisons. So what happened in 2018 is we had those three council people and we called them the glyphosate, because they were going, well, it's just a little dab here and there. And the folks that ran against them said, no, we'll ban glyphosate. There will be no glyphosate. We don't want poisons on there. So whether it's just a little or a lot, it's the perception of like the environmental committee or what the water department is doing. What are you doing to our water? You know, we pay, I'm glad to pay, I don't care the rates went up, that's probably not popular, but you're worth it. We're worth it. It's our water. So I just want to say that people are watching. And we got a meeting together and we told the public what was happening. And they couldn't fill this room or that room down there. They had to get one in Felton. And it was packed. There was well over 100 people and they don't want it. And so, you know, where are we going to go with this? I feel like we're revisiting this on some clerical error. We thought this thing was done and it should be done, not rehashed. Sign it, get this thing going, send it on up. And if you want to talk about it later, then go ahead and do that. But I can tell you that people here don't want that. So I hope you hear those words. And the other thing that Rick Moran said, and I fully agree with that, is that this is about the workers. You know, I worked at the city of Santa Cruz, and you start using this stuff all over the place, you're gonna pay a lot more for using that stuff than a cheap remedy at this point, because people are dying from this. Look it up. Look up Monsanto and how many class action suits there have been against it. It's billions and billions of dollars. And I can tell your personnel department, be on the lookout, because if you have your folks using this kind of product without PPE personnel equipment on them, or a friend doing some dabbing out there, my mouth, I just went. We can't have the public coming in and volunteering to do dabbing.
That was not for here.
I know. No,
We do need to watch our time. We have a lot of people to get through. I let you go a little over and your husband go a
Okay.
little over out of respect, because I know it's a big issue, but
It
we
is.
do have a
worked
lot of
for
people to get
years
through.
on this. We worked for years on this. This
Yeah.
isn't just a new thing. So I wasn't going to speak today, but thank you. I appreciate your time.
Anyone else? Yeah, see if we have anyone online. Oh, would you like to go back to the board? Okay, Mom?
In 2018, there was a lot of environmental leaders in the area that backed that other slate
Okay,
as well.
I would do, yeah, I would like to focus on
So
this, and do we have a motion?
Please,
Well, point of order, we're here about what
please,
this.
please don't interrupt me. This is a
I am the
topic that
chair and I
came up.
do hold that
This is a
authority
topic
to
that came
stay
up.
on and not go back
I-
and talk about a previous slate. Right now, I'm
I am
asking for a
talking about
motion.
the context in which the decision was made. The environmental leaders at the time supported applying glyphosate. And there are a lot of them that are still here. So if we're going to discuss this going forward, we need to pass this first. And then if you wish to rescind the ban, which you've stated previously that you would like to, then you can start that process of doing it.
Do I have a motion?
Do we need a motion for this?
It says, I need a motion.
Okay, fine. I move that we recommend to the Board of Directors that the San Lorenzo Valley Water District readopt the glyphosate ban resolution that was formerly adopted in 2019.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Roll call vote,
Director Foltz,
Yes.
Director Lang,
abstain.
Duffy. Abstain. Mickelson.
Aye. Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
The vote passes.
All right, we're going to move on to item B, the 2025 Integrated Pest Management Policy Update.
Yeah. So this is the pest management policy was made in 2020 and it's supposed to be updated somewhat regularly. There has not been an update since it was created. So we went ahead and kind of took a look through it and saw what kind of didn't make sense or needed updating. From our kind of research, it seems this is very strongly based on the county's IPMP, like very similarly. So there were a few tweaks that we made to kind of make it more specific and relevant to the district. One change that I'll note relevant to our past item is to explicitly ban glyphosate on this document. Now, glyphosate was already banned under section 1D which kind of outlines what pesticides, herbicides were allowed to use. So it was already not allowed, but it just explicitly throws it on there. We also separated and clarified the 3 banned categories of herbicides. They were kind of conflated and weren't exactly as clear before. So we went through and made sure that it was clear that the 3 categories are EPA toxicity category. We don't allow category 1 or 2. And then if it's a EPA carcinogen, and then if it's a California Prop 65 carcinogen. So those are all separate lists that we kind of cross-reference, and if it hits any one of those, then we go ahead and can't use that herbicide. Changing the list of pesticides to a list of pesticides used. As we kind of discussed earlier, there's a whole plethora of herbicides out there. And so I don't think it makes sense to have an unwieldy list of chemicals that we're never going to use. I think it makes more sense and is more clear to the public maybe if we just have a list of pesticides that we're either actively using or have used recently. So that's one change. And then we created a list of pesticides and pesticide application log. And that is provided at the end of this memo. And you'll see on that Garlon 4 Ultra has been used. And that is the only one that has been used. And that one is EPA toxicity category 3. The EPA says it's not likely to be carcinogenic. And it's not on Prop 65. It's not likely to be carcinogenic according to the state of California. Yeah, and for the application of Garlon, it was on less than 1 acre. So like 0.88 acres total. But I think that gives a kind of skewed perception by looking at it from acres, because obviously not the whole acre is being treated. It was just cut and dabbed. And so maybe ounces might be a more appropriate measurement, which I've seen the county report theirs in. And I would estimate less than 10 ounces of this herbicide. With that, I will take any questions.
I'll start with you this time, Nicholson.
I don't think I have questions. I have some comments later.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. This is like the lawyers thing. I can't I tried to tone it down. Kind of touching on comment Bob made earlier. I think section 7 kind of touches on the definition of district property. But I think there should be, oh, sorry, no, that's section 1D. But I'm wondering if we should have an actual definition of what this is going to be pertaining to, like easements. Is it going to be rental property? Is it going to be someone else that has some sort of use on our property, that kind of thing? Under 1D, that last phrase, and shall be included in any future rental or lease agreements, it's a little bit vague as to what should be included. I'm guessing that it's the prohibition, but maybe we should clarify that. 1D2, let's see, as known cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm, but that doesn't cover category 2, which is the suspected. So maybe you could put known or suspected. And we're on, let's see, 1D2, let's see. I think to make it consistent with the following section, it could be known or probable human carcinogens, just to make those two things consistent and to make sure that we're covering the suspected carcinogens. Under 2C, is that a thing? I might have to check that.
Maybe it's 3C.
Yeah, that would be it. You could just call them categorically exempt, and that kind of fits with the language in CEQA and other kinds of things. Okay, and then this is really pedantic. Under 7CV, I think. Let's see. Oh, there should be a period. I think there was one other thing.
Oh, yeah, there's, everything else doesn't have a period and one
What's it-
does. One,
what's
just
it?
one has a period. Yeah, I see that.
Oh, okay, and then under 7, so each of the numbers have kind of like a topic, right? So I think integrated pest management guidelines for all pest problems on district property, period, and then district departments will utilize the following IPM guideline. Okay, and that's all of my super,
That's very helpful.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
We definitely found some, yeah, some of the grammar, the layout was not.
Oh, I didn't even go there. Yeah. I didn't manage to rein myself in a little bit. Yeah. Sorry.
all right, well, Director Folds?
With respect to the Garland 4, was that considered an exemption to the policy?
It was considered not, yeah, not applicable for 1D. It doesn't categorize into any of those categories, and so we deemed it as eligible to be used.
To be used without any kind of review beforehand by the board or community.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh.
No. I've got a lot of comments here too. I don't like the word the eliminate the use of pesticides or herbicides. I guess I don't know if we need to define one word to apply to both, but if there's any kind of ambiguity around that, we probably should make it an explicit definition, right? I don't like the elimination of the word eliminate versus minimize. I think you're probably going to need to deal with the fact that the 2019, I guess you're calling it action, will now be a resolution or potentially a resolution if it were to pass the board. Was there a reason to take out the word completely in one statement of goals?
In one.
Did you find that redundant or something?
Kind of, yeah. And if, yeah, essentially completely eliminated versus eliminated.
Okay. I would like to get some feedback from more than just the committee here, obviously, on the definitions under D, 1D, I think it is, to make sure that we're not, my concern here is whether or not we're starting to move down a process of modifying an effective goal of the elimination of pesticides and herbicides through the use of incremental changes to a policy. You make a small change one year, another small change another year, another small change another year. Over the period of 4 or 5 years, you've effectively rewritten the policy. And I want to make sure that we have a broad discussion around that with a lot of community involvement if we're going to start making changes to this in a substantive way, particularly around the definitions of what it is we purport to ban and why. And that would also include a discussion that Michael brought up a little bit earlier of, hey, is there an appropriate risk trade-off here that we want to make within the confines of what the legal system will actually do to us, making those kinds of changes?
Could I respond to that one?
Sure.
Is that the changes to 1D are not meant to be substantive. They are meant to just make it clearer, because according to our understanding, some of that was conflated and some of the categories were kind of included together and made it somewhat unclear. So we just tried to separate out everything that was in there, should still be in there, just kind of easier to understand was the goal.
Yeah, that's good. But I want to have a lot of community input on that from the people, particularly that were driving a lot of the content around this. I don't think that's something that we're going to accomplish here in one meeting. But I guess we'll see.
All right, Duffy,
Hang
Oh.
hang on a sec.
sorry.
Have we been complying with, it doesn't look to me like the policy relative to reporting and maintaining lists and that sort of thing has been complied with prior to this. So this would be something that would be added, going forward, correct?
What would be
In terms
added,
of-
the
In terms of
compliance?
complying with the reporting requirements.
Yeah.
Exemptions, that sort of thing.
Well, we've been complying, but yeah, not in terms of the reporting to the board or providing an update
Oh, but,
annually.
but that's not compliance, that at some level.
I
right?
mean, yes, on those fronts,
Yeah.
no.
So one of the things that we as a board rely upon staff to do is to take the policies that we pass and implement them rather than us having to come back and say, okay, every year, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Right? That our role is not to operate the district, to pass policy and to make sure that the policy is followed. We rely on staff to provide that information to us. Is there I noticed you changed the title because that title could in fact change periodically. Is there a way to define that in a way that isn't a specific title?
The title in terms of,
Who is responsible for doing, right? Because your title next year may be something completely different.
you could just say the IPM coordinator. But I think we might define in here that the IPM, well, that's a good question if we do define.
Well,
the IPM.
I raise it as a question.
Yep.
It's something that we might want to go back and think about a little bit. We ran into the same thing with the policy around, as general manager, then interim general manager, acting general manager. I think we did something to say, hey, we're defining it this way and it covers all of these. Right? So I'd encourage you to think about that because from my point of view, the accountability person doesn't matter what their title is. It matters whether or not they're performing function, right? And that's who I want to be on the hook for doing that. Notification of pesticide usage, was that process followed during the application of the Garland 4?
Yes.
Okay, so that one, big time, okay. Going forward, it might be helpful. I don't know if you did this around documentation for reporting to the board, the use, that sort of thing. Later on, photos, what have you, of the signs, et cetera. That would probably be helpful. Okay, I think that's it for now, pending hearing from the community. They may have additional topics.
All right, Duffy,
I primarily just have one comment or question. In my line of work, we generally differentiate pretty specifically between what we refer to as a pesticide, which tends to be more animal, insect kind of based, and an herbicide more towards plants, which we consider invasive, but maybe not pests. And I'm wondering, it doesn't seem to differentiate in this report. I feel like maybe it would be clearer to the public if they understood the difference of what chemicals were designed again and what. I guess it's a little broad in general, and I think it might be a little more clear to everybody if you did differentiate between herbicides and what pesticides might be used and what those might target. Like what other animals or say biotic pests you may consider may need treatment. I don't know that there are any. I don't use any of those, but I think that would be another issue if there's any rodenticides, any other chemicals like that that are being put across the landscape. I think the public would definitely need to be aware that there are other animals, insects, other things being targeted. If it's just plants, then I think we should be clear that the pesticides we're referring to are herbicides.
Yeah, that makes sense. And according to my knowledge, we are not using any rodenticide or any other pesticides. I think why we have it kind of broad is the policy also includes things like antimicrobial usage and like other, things that are not herbicides, I guess. So yeah, I'll try to reckon with that and see it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
William?
The issue I have here comes in the wording in which we're mostly only dealing with possible carcinogens. Like I was saying, you can look up the MSDS for Garlon 4 and it'll cause acute kidney failure in very small amounts. So it seems to me like the concern that the community is having here is more for personal protection for the people that are applying this rather than for the chemicals themselves that are being applied. I feel like there's much too much concern on things that are only carcinogens and are still going to kill you stone dead from organ failure.
So you would recommend also incorporating additional,
I would recommend changing the wording to things that are known harmful, but
Well,
it could be overly broad.
those categories are specific, like those are the language of those categories.
I understand that those are the language of the categories. What I'm saying is that what I'm hearing from the community is that they're concerned for the protection of the people that are applying these things. And that's going to be falling under things that are far more than carcinogens. So.
Was that
Really good.
all you had there? Okay. Yeah, I was trying to get back. I guess there wasn't anything in there as far as like PPE and stuff like that.
I was just looking to.
There's a
Yeah.
reference.
There's, oh no, that's antimicrobial.
I think that's a really excellent point because we are hearing that feedback from the public, and I think that that needs to be put into.
Well, I don't
Some I think we need to address, and something we did the other district is, I did not allow employees to administer these pesticides and herbicides. They had to be done by a licensed professional.
Hmm.
And I think it's something, something the district needs to look at.
Okay.
Could make a big difference.
Yeah, employees are volunteers.
Or volunteers, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of had the same thing on kind of application of when we're doing this, that like, I know it's a lot better even with the garland stuff, is that we're doing this in the dry season. I didn't even see any kind of time frames like that, because I definitely wouldn't be approved of putting anything like that on the wet seasons. So I think maybe the addition of those two things need to be put in as far as application procedures into this before it can kind of be approved. And I kind of chuckle a little bit at the Prop 65 because you go into Starbucks and the Prop 65's there, and it's like, okay, so my coffee. And then we're like trying to do fuel managements and also kind of falling under that. So yeah, I definitely think that I couldn't approve that without some kind of PPE guidelines that are in there to make sure that we are protecting people. So, but I like to go out to public comment on this. If we could limit our comments to the 3 minutes, the timer will be up. I know it's a really hot
appreciate
topic.
The note, but this may take a while, all right? So I was involved in the drafting of this document. And yes, we did borrow from Santa Cruz and a number of other places, all right? But the primary intent of the integrated pest management policy was to include and inform the public before pesticides were being used. One of the things that it includes is a yearly review process. That has not been done, all right? In the 4 years since this has been passed. There needs a yearly review process where the public can weigh in before pesticides are being added to the watershed, all right? SLB has a long history. It's not just me. Back to 2004, Jody McGraw, who's our biologist, she's written about this. Everybody has concerns about using pesticides, and it's been a long history in the San Lorenzo Valley. All right. We used to have a guy, Ken Moore, who used to take volunteers out. He had a spray bottle, and he gave the volunteers spray bottle, glyphosate. That's not happening anymore. All right. We have neighbors in the north, San Francisco, who label this Garland 4 the most toxic chemical in their categorization of plants of toxicity. We have neighbors in the south. There are 2 people on a 30-day hunger strike right now to bring attention to the pesticide use around schools. Right? this is not something that's going away. This is something that's increasing public opposition. All right. The other thing about the use of pesticides in general is it's just a short-term problem here. This broom up here in the Olympia watershed is not going away. We're not on an island. The seeds, our birds, animals, wind is going to bring this right back in it, no matter what you do to it. All right. So I'm going to read a couple things from the MSDS. All right, material safety data sheet. This is about fire when you use of Garland 4. All right, this is what their recommendation in that document. Evacuate the area. Fight fire upwind to avoid hazardous fumes and decomposition of products. Dike and collect water used to fight fire to prevent damage due to runoff. Use a self-contained breathing apparatus with full mouth face piece and protective clothing. When I told this to my
I'll give you
neighbor,
30 more seconds to wrap
fire
up.
chief in Alameda, he said that is absolutely asinine. And if I could just finish one paragraph here, all right? And again, from the MSDS, any weed population may contain or develop plant resistant to group 4 herbicides, which is this garlic. Resistant weeds may dominate the weed population. These herbicides are used repeatedly in the same field. Nobody's talking about this as a one-time thing. That broom is not going away with one-time application. Such resistant weed plants may not be effectively managed using group 4 herbicides, but may be effectively managed utilizing other herbicides alone or in mixtures from a different herbicide group that are labeled or for control of these weeds and or by using cultural or mechanical practices. That's what I advocate. Cultural and mechanical practices, not pesticides. Again, the intent of this integrated pest management plan was to bring these issues up before they were implemented, not after, not to ask for forgiveness, but before they were done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see anyone online. I don't know if we're quite ready for a motion on this one. I think we need to kind of go back and look at this a little bit more and bring it back to the environmental committee. If the rest of the board is okay with that, Director Fultz?
Well, you know, the committees are normally intended to be run a little bit differently than board meetings, and that, you know, the idea is to get a more of a flow of information between the committee and the board. But if we think that we can't do that, and within the context of a 3-minute comment rule, one of the ways to deal with that is through a workshop, where you have way more lax around, you know, comment periods and that sort of thing, and allows for more of a back and forth and to address some of the issues, for example, that Michael's brought up, that Rick has brought up. I think that may be what we want to do here. I know it may seem like a lot of work, but actually we did a couple of workshops in the 2019-2020 period, and they actually came off very well, and accomplished what we were trying to do, which is get real community input into the process. You know, hearing, for example, the MSDS on the Garland 4, I'm like, I'm not sure that I would necessarily want that to be used. And it was used apparently during the wet season. It looks like, at least.
With safeguards, yeah.
Okay, but it was still used during the wet season. So I think this is a area that we just can't accomplish with 3-minute comment periods and, you know, cutting people off and not having a real exchange of information. Because I think there's a lot of things that we need to cover here.
I make a suggestion of that allowing Chris and staff to work on the policy with the comments that have been made thus far. Then distributing that to the committee for further comments, and then we can bring that final policy back for that workshop that you're referring to. So that, I mean, obviously this is a passion and a concern for the public. I want them to have the opportunity to express all of their concerns. So I agree with you, but let's try to get everything finalized first, and then we can bring that to them and have them say what they want to say.
Would you be okay with, for example, people emailing in any additional comments they'd have
Oh, yes,
subsequent to this
absolutely.
as input?
And
So-
yeah, and if Rick, if you want to send any of those things, I'm much better at, I'm sorry, I had a hard stop at 11. I guess my alarm's going off. I read that and digest that a lot better on paper. So you're very welcome to send that to me instead of just hearing that, because I think those are really important things to read. So
And I think one of the things that we also need to try to address in this conversation is the aspect of broom in Olympia. Because I've may asked the question before, if the neighbors aren't doing anything, are we just getting on a hamster wheel? You know, where we can't really eradicate it, it's always going to come back. I think we also need to talk about where we want to spend our time and money and what goals we want to accomplish with this. And is that an appropriate use of time and resources? We can't get rid of broom. Why do we want to spend money on it every year? Is there a better place we could spend that money and accomplish better goals? Or is there an ongoing grant that we can get that will constantly refresh our broom eradication program? These are things I think we also need to discuss within the context of this integrated pest management policy / herbicides. You have to leave.
I do, and I don't know if we wanted to table the last thing to the next environmental committee, because it's supposed to be going from 10 to 11, or Bob can take over
Well,
as chair. I don't know, whichever you would like.
I am fine with moving forward with this item, and then if there's further discussion, we can bring it back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm sorry, I had.
Quick comment. If this is gonna be, in a forum, that, in the spirit of transparency, these, environmental committee meeting notifications are fine stuff. But if it could be included in the website, that there is going to be a meeting on this, I'm sure the public would be really appreciative, rather than seeing it, in some other document somewhere. But nice little, you guys have little stories down there in the bottom of your website. Include that in possible workshop that you could have. Help inform the public about this.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, so under the board policy, board member has to chair the meeting. So with Felina having to leave, I'll take over this duty. But I'm not taking over the chair. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last item. By the way, Jason, assuming the committee agrees, I think your suggestion makes sense to me. Does everybody agree with that? Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Okay, let's move on to the last item. We've had somebody here waiting very patiently. Thank you for doing that. Chris, could you go ahead and do the introduction to it?
Yeah. So just to provide a little background on what this item is. It focuses on trees on district property that are threatening neighboring properties. This is a problem that has become not necessarily a problem, but an issue that we deal with that has been happening more and more. I think especially following the CZU fire, there are more hazard trees out there. And essentially when someone gives us a call and says, hey, I think this tree is threatening my house or my carport or whatever, I will basically contact Slim. We will go out there and first of all, we'll figure out if the tree is on our property, because if not on our property, we don't deal with it. And then once we determine that it is on our property, we go ahead and Slim does like an analysis of the tree, and we kind of figure out our management decision from there. Currently, these decisions are not super clear to the person who's called it in. It's kind of just on our end being like, well, Slim has a lot of experience and I trust his decision, his guidance, but it's not exactly clear to the homeowner. We obviously explain it, but it's not based on a standardized rubric or anything like that. And so what we've done here is gone through and made a policy so that when we do make those decisions, it is hopefully more transparent and they understand where we're coming from, as well as what the management decision associated with the level of risk are. It's based on other entities that have similar policies. And yeah, Slim, do you have anything to add to what I've?
I think it also helps staff, because right now staff kind of gets in a difficult position. It's like, say, I come up with a determination that this tree has a high likelihood of failure, but a low likelihood of hitting anything, because it's a 120-foot tall tree and it's 110 feet from the house. So it's like, and then basically staff has to make a decision, and that's hard. Am I gonna get sued because I decided it wasn't worth the district's money to cut the tree down? And this should help in that scenario also, because it kind of gives a basic, and that's the same model that we looked at several different models for other organizations that own lots of trees, National Park Service being one, Forest Service, PG&E uses a similar thing for the trees that they manage, because they can't realistically cut every risky tree down. It's just not real, nor would we want to. You'd end up with, 120-foot circle around your property of nothing, and then it would be brushed, and then you'd have a fire hazard. So yeah, the policy, I think, is definitely what we want to get towards, where it helps us make decisions and kind of creates a fairness to where we spend our money, I guess.
Yeah. And I think another piece that you kind of touched on was liability, because once someone kind of reaches out to us about a hazardous tree, it's my understanding that liability is then on us because we know about it. And so, yeah, being able to deal with this in a economical way is, and a safe way, obviously, are of utmost importance. With that, any questions or comments?
Well, let's go ahead and start here with Michael, and then we'll move down. Yeah.
I think it is a great idea. I think it adds a lot of clarity. I think we do need to share this with our neighbors, so they can also assess trees that are around them if they feel like it's a hazard tree. That being said, it will not replace the need to have an expert evaluate the tree from a liability standpoint. There's going to be, yes, when you are contacted, it is an issue. But once an arborist or a forester has determined that that tree is dangerous, you are at that point liable to take care of the problem. And so I think from a legal standpoint, this isn't going to change anything, but I think from a public disclosure perspective and also from an operational perspective, I think this will allow the staff as well to recognize hazards and bring it to the attention as well. So I think it's useful. I think it was good work that's been done. I just want to, and at no point did it suggest that this is taking that place, but I just want to say that this in combination with the arborist or forest for doing the evaluations, I think will be very helpful.
Next.
The only thing that I have to add is in splitting the costs of prospective trees that have to come down. Is this only coming at our suggestion, or is this coming at the neighbor's suggestion as well?
Essentially, we are getting more and more of these requests, so it costs kind of add up, and what we found is for ones that we don't necessarily have to remove, where it's like, a middle ground, it's like, oh, the tree could fall, but we're not sure. It's like if the neighbor wants to cut it, that provides some like a way for them to make it happen, and then we're not totally stuck in this limbo making a decision on a tree that's questionable. It kind of gives us a push to do it as well.
And something like this, it also covers situations where you may have a tree that is definitely gonna fall, and it's definitely gonna hit a playhouse, and the playhouse has a value of $200. The removal of the tree has a value of $2,000. What do you do in that situation? So there's an opportunity, like, we really shouldn't spend $2,000 to cover a $200 fence repair. That doesn't make any sense, So in those situations, if we split the cost amount with landlord, maybe it's a little closer, but let's say it's $1,000 fence repair and it's a $2,000 tree removal. And if they're gonna pay half for removal, A, for one thing, it makes more economic sense, and B, it's also a little bit of a litmus test for the neighbor. What we'll find is, again, I work for a lot of landowner forester. There are a lot of reasons why people want to cut trees down, and some of them may not be as direct as they present. View, tree that's affecting a view may suddenly become a hazard. I think that tree's gonna hit my house. Hey, what's the view? It drops leaves in their swimming pool, it drops pitch on their BMW. There's lots of reasons why they may want a tree down that isn't on their property, that they don't have control of. And sometimes we can be okay with removing that tree. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hazard, especially if it isn't cost to us. We may review it and say, we don't really care if you cut down that tree. It's pretty low hazard in terms of, contacting us about a hazard, but hey, if you want to take it down at your cost, we're okay with that. And also we do have the option all the time to reduce the cost of a removal that's on our property by allowing the tree to be felled onto our property as opposed to climb a piece down, which could be, $2,500, $3,500 pretty quickly for a big fir tree. Whereas you might be able to pull it over into our property and clean it up, like chop it all up and let it rot on the ground, which reduces the cost. And we can work with neighbors on those scenarios too. So get in a situation where a tree may have a low, moderately low hazard of falling, the neighbor's still concerned about it, they're scared of it. But then here's an option. We'll let you fall the tree onto our property, which reduces the cost by half. And then we'll pay for half of it. And you pay the other half. So it's just an opportunity to work with our neighbors and maybe in a little more equitable way for us being the district.
Thank you.
I love this. I just have a question. Historically, have people abided by the decision that the district makes regarding the tree, or do they want it contested or argue it about it, or do they disagree?
In my time, I haven't seen any contesting. I feel like we work with them pretty well. Slim, have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, if they have another arborist look at it, then we look at that report too. Some of my clients require that they have their own arborist look at it. Again, that's kind of a litmus test for someone to put money up front, puts money where the mouth is. Because the reality is tree work's expensive. If we put a nice ad in the paper that said, Seminoles only order to remove any hazardous tree next to your property, tomorrow we would have 5,000 inquiries on Chris's death. Like, wow, you should look at my tree because I'm really concerned about it. So I mean, there certainly are a lot of trees out there. So having some sort of a process is really important. It really is.
I'm just wondering, is typically there's some sort of appeal process, right? Once an agency makes a decision, and it doesn't sound like it's necessary, but I just wanted to flag that. I mean, are we going to be saying that Slim is his determination is going to be binding on anyone? And what if they go out and get their own arborist after you're out there and they want to present that information to the district? I mean, are these scenarios?
For a time.
Yeah.
So a tree that may be within a reasonable expectation of risk today, next year that may change. And that's one thing we always try to work with the neighbors and say, hey, if this tree changes, you notice a change, tell us.
Yeah.
And we'll look at that tree again and revisit it. It seems like it shifted its position. It's no longer dark green, it's turning yellow. I mean, there's also big branches are breaking, if something happens.
Yeah.
Then we reevaluate the tree because all trees do fall. There are no trees that stay standing forever.
Yeah.
And when we go out and review a tree as a forester or arborist, what we're looking for is indicators of accelerated decline.
Yeah.
So I mean, all trees are in decline once they get to a certain age, they start getting old and they start falling apart. And we're looking for those indicators. Say, wow, this thing's getting close to the end. We should definitely do something about it. And it has to have a target. A tree that just falls and doesn't have the likelihood of hitting anything.
Yeah.
Isn't really a risk to us if it just falls on the grass.
Yeah.
But yes, if someone gets their own arborist report, and that has happened before, we definitely take that into consideration and may revisit it. But ultimately, it is our team that would make the determination here.
And really, it's a risk determination, risk versus cost.
Yeah.
It's hard when you look at a perfectly straight tree like this, and maybe it's 100-foot tall tree and the house is 60 feet away. There's no indication the tree would fall any particular direction because it's perfectly straight. That house occupies 20 degrees of its range of fall. It has a 360-degree potential fall radius. It becomes a statistical analysis. You have the 23% chance of hitting that house if it falls. talk to the house, or the people in it, talk to tree removal. You have to make a decision somewhere, that's basically how much risk the district is willing to accept, that they do have to accept a certain amount of risk, we can't cut every tree,
Oh, yeah.
we just can't.
On that particular point, most policies that involve the community have an appeal process, and it's explicitly stated in the policy. So I thank you for bringing that up. I had that as an area of concern as well. And typically the appeal is to the general manager first, obviously, and then if the community member is still not has concerns, they can come to the board, which is chain of command, basically following through. You know, I mean, in general, I'm in favor of cutting hazard trees, particularly at, you know, wildland habitable boundaries. Because ultimately, as you say, I mean, I grew up in a forest area, all trees fall eventually, it's just a fact of life. But this might be a grand opportunity at some point to have a more to be able to have more of a program to remove hazard trees proactively as opposed to waiting for a while. I'll also say within the context of a CRM system for the district, identifying people who have or parcels that have potentially hazardous tree, if they bring that to us, it allows us to track that because as you say, over time they change. I had a pine tree that was perfectly healthy. 5 years later, PG&E said that got to come out or it's going to take down our pole. And they're right. I mean, it was deteriorating. So that's something that we might also want to put into the CRM system for tracking purposes. Once it's in there, it's very easy to pull up, you know, do we need to review this again at some point? Let's see. Just a couple sections and all policies should have change management section and approval or adoption section so that those become a permanent part of the document. Same thing with the integrated pest management, by the way. I don't know if we have something on our website or social media for reporting hazards. We don't have to specifically identify trees, but just, you know, if you see something, basically we'll want to know about it, particularly if it's on our property. I am, just another nit, put the definition of RPF before you use it. So it was after, small nit. I would prefer using a registered surveyor for the boundary. That's actually something that I had suggested to Rick a long time ago. I own property that it borders on Forest Service land. They have paddles about every 100 feet that they have put on there that identify that it's district property. I think that also might be a good thing to have in general. I'm concerned about using our own, again, from a liability point of view, if we're not using a registered surveyor in the same way we use a registered professional forester, I'm concerned about that as well. I don't necessarily know that we need to use a local RPF, no offense, but just an RPF. So I don't know that we need the word local in there. It may be that we get service from somebody that isn't local for whatever reason. And that should be okay with us. And yeah, my last comment here is, will a tree grow into a hazard? You know, there are some trees that over time might grow taller and present more of a hazard. I have a number of trees in my property that are angled like this because they're trying to get out into the sun, out away from the redwoods that continue to grow higher. And over time, those trees have fallen. Fortunately, they're an area that doesn't affect me at all. I just let them go. But there are trees that can grow in that fashion, particularly the madrones and the oaks, which are issues. I don't know if there needs to be anything in here about survey relative to oak disease or anything like that, but I know in a couple of in my property, a couple trees have fallen over because they got the whatever the oak disease is.
Sun note that.
Yeah, it took them down right away. I'm glad to hear that your interactions with the community have been good. I can imagine that there would be some in the community that would be concerned about allowing a tree to fall anywhere, even if the risk were low. I would probably want to make sure we're adding in here is the area that negligible risk, is it trafficked? Are there people moving through it? There's nothing worse than, saying, okay, well, it's not going to hit the house, but it's in an area that might hit somebody if they're moving through it. So I think we might want to reevaluate the rubric with respect to, okay, what are all the things that might happen within that, not just necessarily a house or a structure or something like that. I do like the fact that you have a rubric in there. I think that's very good. It helps community members understand the means by which we're making the decision, but I think we need to expand on what are the elements that we're looking at that are the likelihood of failure or impact. It's not clear to me what that is in here. It just sort of says it well. It's process. And I think the more we can identify what we're looking at with respect to risk and consequences, I think the better that it would be. I don't know that this is quite ready, from my perspective, quite ready to go to the board yet, based on some of the feedback we've had. But I'll let the committee weigh in on that as well after we get community input.
Okay, respond to some of those concerns.
Yeah, can you step up?
Oh,
to
I'm
the-
sorry. So I think it answered two of the concerns. One was the survey concern, using like a surveyor. And we wouldn't put it like a surveyor, and we were determined that we were very close to a line that we had limited confidence in where we thought it was. As a registered professional forester, we are legally permitted not to do survey work, but to establish forest boundaries in concerns when we're dealing with tree removals. And so it's perfectly okay for me to go out there and make an estimate, which is what I do, of where the line is, and often it's very clear that the tree is clearly on us or clearly not on us. If it came down to a scenario where we found the corner for the property, it was 400 feet from the tree, and we're trying to get a line, that's we would bring in a surveyor, because we wouldn't be able to make that determination clearly as to whether it was on us or not. So I think basically what we already are doing is probably appropriate, which is if it's clearly on us or clearly off us, we don't bring in a surveyor. Surveys are very expensive. And we may not necessarily need it. And again, then we could get into basically hidden agendas. People might call it a tree because they want a property survey. And in some of our situations, I mean, we have a lot of land. We could be half a mile from the nearest corner. That could be very, very expensive for a true determination of land. It's only what a surveyor can do. Transient targets, which are things like people moving through an area. These are what you're assessing. What is the target? And a transient target is a target. It's obviously less of a target.
Excuse me, are you having to leave as well?
I'm afraid so.
Okay, so as of right now, once you step out the door, we no longer have a quorum and we can no longer continue the meeting.
Okay.
I do have some remarks in response to that, but we'll have to address this at a future time.
Are you gonna, or is there anything you heard that you want to incorporate into the document?
Well, we can't,
Yes.
unfortunately,
Well, no, I was just wondering if you
stay a
wanted
little
to.
bit longer for her to ask that question. That would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to send us a revised one for the
Yes.
next meeting? Okay, wonderful.
And please do send in any additional comments that you might have. Understand this went a little bit longer. This sometimes happens with committees where we go over an hour just because of the nature of the agenda.
I thought our meetings were an hour and a half, so.
Okay, so we're adjourning the meeting.